out guilt of iniquity that we're out here, we're watching, and the whole world's watching, and the walls shall be coming down.
Wasn't, the poles and the harness was. The flags was sold for the Bundy girls. They fetched a good price.
Donation. All right, here we go. Everybody get behind Mr. David.
Hold my camera. You want to hold the camera? I'm going to let them start walking. Yeah. I'm going to let you turn it around and just hold it for me.
What do we want?
Let them get started. I'll hand this to you.
When do we want it?
Yeah. I'm going to go up there too.
What do we want?
Just hold it for me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When do we want it?
Sing! Sing!
Well, everybody, it's after court here.
Sorry.
We're still at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. We was in court till after 12:30 today, while government's still presenting closing arguments here in this case. I'm gonna try to go over as much as I can. As you've seen, everybody took off for the Jericho March. I'm not gonna join in the day. I'm gonna try to we just got like 15 more minutes to get back up into court. They gave us a really short lunch break. There's a lot to go over today. One of the things, Ken Medenbach was arrested very first thing this morning, coming down here to support these men in this trial. He has a court hearing himself right here in this same federal court building at 3 o'clock today. This is also the anniversary of the protest at the Bundy Ranch 3 years ago today, where the cows were released, where the BLM backed up and left. Right now we're hearing all this again, just like a broken record up here in this court of what we've heard for the last 8 weeks now. I think the day is day 27 or day 28. I'm not positive. I had to look exactly at my notes. But so we've had a lot going on. We've had a lot of the people that have actually walked out of the courtroom today disgusted of what's going on in there. First thing we heard was the government objections to the defense team on what they were going to say in their own opening arguments. Denying the defense team, closing arguments, denying the defense team lots of exhibits and stuff in the closing arguments, cutting their closing arguments down really short, micromanaging these closing arguments. We've got, so far we've been the rest of the morning just with closing arguments with the government up until just a few minutes ago, and they're still not finished. We got to go back. We've heard the whole case over and over again, the same videos, the same pictures of the guns, the same
Except
everything.
For one video.
And one video was actually added today that was a little bit different, trying to show a different version of when Cliven was on the stage. And this video, I understand, was taken by undercover agent that was in the crowd, and he mainly took pictures of just people in camouflage and people in guns, and he wasn't really focusing on the stage. This was played to the jurors today. But other than that, we've heard just cumulative evidence again, over and over again. Some of these videos have been played dozens and dozens and dozens of times. These pictures have been played over and over and over again for the jurors to hear. We got to see the same thing over again. One thing was longbow videos of Eric Parker and Scott Drexler again.
And Burleson.
Those, what's that?
And Burleson.
And Burleson, Greg Burleson too.
They played him over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Trying to show a narrative of what Greg Burleson said of when he was drunk under these in these longbow interviews. But Eric Parker has always maintained principle. So has Scott Drexler. And we was happy with some of that to be played. But some of this other stuff is cumulative, just over and over and over again. The prosecutors just keep stressing how dangerous this stuff looked. We had another gentleman that got up to the judge, and he shouted before he walked out of the room, "Treason, treason" to the judge. And then he was escorted out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals here and told he couldn't go back in. Again, like I said, several people have walked out, probably over half of us. There's close to 60 of us and in there, and before it was over with here, there's probably down to just 30 of us in there. These people are getting upset, emotional at these things that the prosecutors keep bringing up and the lies that they're presenting in these closing arguments.
But I wish we would all stay, because we need it. It makes us look like we can't handle what they're saying.
We really need to stay standing strong for these people. These defendants need to see us in there, and with so many people walking out, it could look bad towards the jurors. We need the support in the courtroom, even if it is emotional. You got to think about, these guys have been in jail now for over 410 days in jail without bond. So they really need
they need us there, and
they
need us to be able to hear the entire prosecution so that we know where they're at.
Exactly. There's going to be no videos played to the jurors yet of the dead cows that the BLM killed. Dozens and dozens of dead cows and mass graves. That cannot be played in these closing arguments. No videos of Dave Bundy being arrested. No videos of BLM misconduct. The government stated again today in their arguments with motions that there is no evidence of any BLM misconduct, and the jurors don't need to be threatened again with jury nullification in this case.
They keep stressing it was their lawful, legal duty, and that they were only doing what they were supposed to do by court orders. And all we had to do was appeal.
Yeah, just appeal it if you don't like the decision, but you don't have any right to intimidate these law officers. You don't even have a right to carry a gun, even if it's holstered or unloaded. These guns are dangerous. These are the things that they're doing. One thing the government flip-flops back and forth on. The government bears all
burden of proof.
And they said that in the jury instructions that the government doesn't need burden of proof. And so they go flip-flop back and forth saying that just this evidence alone proves it, but the government does not have to bear a burden of proof for you to find them guilty. And they also stated that the internet is a way of interstate commerce, that it's like a building. If you're impeding people even on the internet, you can be charged with interstate commerce. It's a crime, and that it's a facility. The internet is a facility, and with you posting things on the internet, if it makes the government or these BLM agents fearful, that's also a way of impeding these federal officers just by posting a post on Facebook again. The judge laughs quite loudly at the defendants when they were arguing their motions, and she just made fun of them and just tells them that they are not going to play these certain videos to the jurors. They're not going to risk jury nullification again. That's a big thing that we've heard over and over and over again, is jury nullification outside the ears of the jurors. You got to take this for granted. These are motions that are being heard with the jurors not in the room, and the judge and the prosecutor here is very fearful that there might be jury nullification in this case, and they do not want to take that chance. So they're repeating and denying us tons and tons of motions, tons and tons of exhibits that are evidence already in this case, but we're not going to play it to the jurors. When the jurors walked in, she tells them that the defendants have a right to closing arguments. But what she doesn't tell them, and she's acting really nice to them, is that they have a right to closing arguments, but they don't have a right to all the closing arguments, that they're being micromanaged with these closing arguments. So there's still a lot of stuff's being held back.
How long was it, though, that they have been speaking? He's not even done. He hasn't closed yet.
All morning.
Over 2 hours?
Well, it started at 8:30 this morning. I would say the jurors came in at 9. So 3.5 hours of closing arguments.
Prosecution,
so
only one lawyer is up there, the prosecutor, and all he gets free reign.
Playing videos after videos after videos, exhibits and pictures, all this stuff pretty much we've seen before. You are responsible, the prosecutor said, for others' action while in the act of a crime, even if you showed up after the fact. So like Jerry DeLuma showed up a day later, he's responsible for everyone's actions, even on the 12th when he didn't even show up on the 13th. And so this kind of sums up most of what we have to say. We've got a few statements here that Eric Parker said here. One thing I thought was very interesting, Eric Parker said that in a video that Cliven Bundy, he basically fired the BLM.
Right.
And the judge, the prosecutors played this to the jurors today, that's what he said. And that's exactly what he done. He felt the overreach of federal government, and he wants these BLM officers out of the state. They have no jurisdiction here. And this has been proved over and over again, but the federal government, that's not on trial. They're trying to prove that what's on trial is these guys had other crimes, impeding federal officers, conspiracy against the federal government. So that's kind of sums up what we've got here right now.
Well, but there's so much that the jury does not know. The jury does not know about Harry Reid having a ranch nearby, the Bundy Ranch.
All this stuff's being held here.
They don't know that Harry Reid assigned the judge her position.
I was looking at some pages of evidences here that is redacted. Page after page after page of stuff is redacted from the jurors, and all they get to see is a little bitty Facebook post, and it's in evidence, but the federal government has redacted all these pages, keeping this evidence from the jurors because it's not this evidence they don't need to see. It might cause jury nullification. So
they also do not recognize the freedom of Americans to be able to stand armed against the tyranny of the government. They're not even allowing them to understand the Constitution, and they just keep dismissing it, saying that's not right.
That was in the jury instructions, telling them you don't have a right absolutely at all ever to stand against the federal government at all, even protesting if you have a gun on or have anything. You have First Amendment areas as they set up there, and the government stressed that. We set these First Amendment areas up, these safe zones for these people to be. The rest of the park, the rest of all this desert was closed off to the public. They had a safe zone. They were to be there. That's why we set it up, because we had work to do. If you get out of that First Amendment area, then you're impeding federal officers, whether you have a gun or not. You was not allowed out of that First Amendment area. That First Amendment area was 7 miles from where the cows were.
I saw it myself yesterday.
We went out there yesterday with a big group of people. We took a tour of the wash area.
I saw where the BLM had practiced their shooting to prepare for war.
Yes, they did, exactly. We picked up bullets. We picked up bullet casings that are still there from 3 years ago where the BLM done all this protesting. It looks like they're making it back around again. So they made their first round. We've got a good group of people out here, a lot of children that came today. And so we're thankful for all the support. A lot of flags. We're going to have to rush up there just soon because we've got just a few minutes to get back up there. But thanks again for joining us. Close to 5 o'clock. Hopefully we can be back out. As you know, we're late today. We was hoping to do this at noon, and we're over an hour late already.
We're still not out of testimony
Still
or
got
closing
more
argument.
closing arguments with the prosecutors, and still haven't even got the first defendant up there yet to do closing arguments. But Todd Engel is doing closing arguments for himself, even if it is micromanaged.
That's right.
God bless. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back again as quick as we can this evening at 5 o'clock.
Hi, Laura Jones. I love you.
Guilty! 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 Guilty!
God bless the Patriots!
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 God bless the Patriots! You going again?
Yeah!
Hey, Captain Morgan, we got a slight technical difficulty with one of our broadcasts.
We're going to run that again, ladies and gentlemen. And 3, 2, 1, here we go.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're down here at Las Vegas, Nevada Federal Courthouse again. Had a big day. We got a lot to tell you in a short time, but it was a long day today. First off, Ken Mettenbach gave you a little bit of an update at the noon break. But Ken Mettenbach was arrested this morning trying to come here to court to support the Patriots here, support these 6 defendants that are in court. He did have a hearing at 3 o'clock, a detention hearing in the same building. He is being detained. He is supposedly going to be transferred back to Oregon. It's a probation violation for squatting on BLM land is what they're saying. And it has nothing to do with this trial necessarily. It's just he likes to protest BLM property, and he was protesting on some BLM property back in Oregon, and he's found guilty here not too long ago, and he's on probation for that. So he was held, and he's not being able to go home from here, except he's going to be transferred back to Oregon with the U.S. Marshals. So that's kind of what we know of Ken Mettenbach. He's being taken out to Prump, is what we're told, and being held there. But Andrea has some updates for tomorrow.
Micah McGuire, who is in Tier 2, they will be the last ones going to trial later this year. He actually has a court appearance tomorrow to talk about, is it firing his lawyer?
He wants to go pro se. He's going to ask the judge to allow him to go pro se to represent himself in this case.
He's also going to try to fire his lawyer so that he doesn't get stuck with the lawyer that he doesn't like as his co-counsel like Todd Engel did. So at 10 o'clock tomorrow, it looks like both trials will be going, or both hearings will be going on at the same time. So we're going to be pulled in 2 different directions, but we're going to try to fill that room for him tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
8 o'clock tomorrow. We're getting back here again. We're starting a half hour early tomorrow. Sometimes it's 8:30, but tomorrow it's 8 o'clock. We'll be back down here again, finishing up with 3 more closing arguments with 3 final defendants. The government presented theirs today. Stephen Stewart presented their closing arguments. Eric Parker did his closing arguments, and Todd Engel did his closing arguments. As short as it was, he got 19 objections by the government during his closing arguments, and but he still did well. In the end of his closing arguments, we had a lot of tears throughout the courtroom. He did well representing himself as always. All 3 of these defendants and their attorneys did awesome today. So we'll let Andrea tell you a little bit about this in better notes.
So we started out the morning, the judge and Myrie are stopping the defense of some of the defendants. Scott Drexler cannot play videos in evidence to prove why he came to the ranch because he did not get on the stand to say that is why he came to the ranch, even though he talks about them in his longbow. So this is evidence that's already in evidence, and he can't bring it up in his closing statement because he did not take the stand. This goes back to show exactly what's been going on this entire time, that they're trying to prevent these guys from having their defense. They argued that Stewart couldn't use quotes from Susan B. Anthony, Benjamin Franklin, and the Ferguson protesters to show what some of his quotes on Facebook were like.
He wasn't allowed to bring that up because there was nothing in evidence that showed that he actually looked at those quotes. A quote from the 1700s that everyone learned in civics and U.S. history. Tanasi was not allowed to say that Steve Stewart saw those quotes and that was on his mind, and it was not admitted as a state of mind defense for Stephen Stewart, because there was no evidence presented to the court that he actually saw the quote.
Then we go into the government's closing statements. Some of their statements, they use the barrel of a rifle to make federal law enforcement leave federal public lands 3 years ago today. Today is the anniversary of the Bundy Ranch. It did happen 3 years ago, and I think that there's no better day to have closing statements inside, and they both sides use this to their advantage. They came from other states to join Cliven Bundy to assault, extort, and obstruct federal officers to release 400 head of cattle that were property of the federal government. They brought up many different Facebook posts, oiling bolts and loading magazines, not making signs to protest. Talking about blocking the freeway, and repeatedly saying with a gun, not a protest sign. That was their entire closing argument today. He repeated things over and over again, and repeatedly saying, and he brought a gun, not a sign, not a flag. So pretty much saying that they could not be protesters because they brought their gun.
One thing he said about that, he said some people come with signs and some people protest with guns. And this is what Eric Parker's attorney brought out very clearly. He says, not everybody brings a sign to a protest. Some people protest their Second Amendment with a gun, and they do it peacefully. And that's exactly what Eric Parker and these guys did.
They also showed the video, and this is the same video they took the screenshots of and tried to say this is Eric Parker pointing a weapon over the Jersey barrier, even though the video screenshots are from like a few seconds of video. They slowed it down and actually played it today, which was good. And he says, we dispute him pointing a weapon or not, but this is what law enforcement is seeing. Up and down, up and down. In a split second, they had to make a decision. Then he turns to the jury and says, use your common sense, ladies and gentlemen. When is the last time you saw something like that on the bridge? And showed a picture of Eric prone on the bridge. He's insulting the jury and saying that if they don't find them guilty, they are stupid. And they've been making these inferences the entire time. Then Dickerson goes through every count on the indictment, gives his opinion, and how he has proven each count. So he's pretty much showing them and inferring that this is how you put them guilty. So basically there's no Second Amendment. If you brought a gun to the event to intimidate law enforcement officers, the gun does not need to be visible to the person there. Just having it with intent to intimidate is a crime. Then he says Parker and Stewart were prone on a bridge. There was an objection because Stewart was never prone on a bridge, and he goes, oh, you're right, Parker and Drexler were prone on a bridge, and Stewart was a spotter for Parker.
He gets to see this live.
This is all suggestive prosecution. They're literally going through the jury verdict form, and he is showing them how to fill it out, but he's also implying the guilt. So you find him guilty here, and then you have to see if they brandished a weapon. And he's literally got the jury form in front of him with the little check boxes, and he is like checking off the boxes and showing them how to prove they're guilty. So I thought that was going above and beyond, and it wasn't objected to, so I found that very interesting. When Tonasi got up for Stewart, he rolled up a meme that said he brought his gun to exercise his First Amendment with his second. He did so he would not be sprayed in the face with mace, just like this post. Dickerson has done a great job of weaving everyone together in a huge conspiracy and throwing it out at all of you, talking to the jury. It is your job to consider the facts and separate the people out as individuals, ensure that you believe that their individual guilt without a reasonable doubt. They talked about the First Amendment zone in the middle of the desert where people were being herdled like cattle. I thought that was very important.
And what he said about that, he said the First Amendment isn't in a box. The First Amendment is where your feet are at. So wherever you're standing is your First Amendment right. We're standing kind of in a First Amendment area, or an area here they're considered not First Amendment because this is federal property here. And they've been hassling us for the last 8 weeks up in this area. So he says it's not a First Amendment area like a box like at the Bundy Ranch. It's where your feet are at. That's where your First Amendment rights are.
He also said Stephen brought his gun so his family didn't have to make funeral plans, as they brought up the post of a Clark County official saying Bundy supporters better have funeral plans. He said no threats were made to assault an officer. He also said, where was Sheriff Gillespie and Tom Roberts? Of course, he wanted to say where was Dan Love as well, but we all know that that wasn't allowed in their closing statements. But we could have added that, and I'm sure, I hope the jury knew that. He also said, here at this point, Stephen Stewart is spotting girls, not spotting people for Eric Parker. And that political pressure ended the operations, not what these guys did. And that the operations were ended on the 11th and not on the 12th. Then we had Marchese get up for Parker. He brought in Dave Bundy's arrest picture. He was arrested for taking pictures of snipers. He talked about Margaret getting thrown to the ground. The government says she was in front of trucks, but as you can see in this video, she was not. Ammon Bundy then came to the aid of his aunt, and he was tased and had a attack dog sicked on him. Talks about how Eric also saw the First Amendment zones, and he believes the First Amendment is not a zone, but a right. And if he is not secure in his rights, I am not secure in mine. He said they were hurting people, and I tell my kids that you have to stand up for your neighbor and stand up for each other. And if I didn't do that, I'd be a hypocrite.
Amen.
He had a gun, and that's just what guys from Idaho do, said Jess Marchese about Eric Parker. They talked about how the Longbow producer, Charles Johnson, offered alcohol, but he says he offered alcohol and chips and M&Ms, but you don't see anyone eating chips or M&Ms on the videos. And that he kept trying to put words in people's mouths, furthering the narrative. He quoted, he acted like a used car salesman selling defective cars to senior citizens.
He said that. Did you hear that, Jason?
He talked about Flynn's video and the fact that Flynn was even saying that they said lethal force. He talked about the fact that Eric Parker did guard duty when he first got there, and he called them, they were pretty much parking attendants who greeted people and told them where to park. Talked about the BLM agents being up all night after hearing that dangerous individuals were coming to kill them. He also talked about Nevada Highway Patrol person that was given bad info and was told things that made him fear for his life so badly he had to call his wife and kids and drive over 100 miles per hour to get out to a wash that people weren't even in yet. He talked about the viral nature of the photos of Eric and the fact that many people who testified about the black hat with the white insignia made no mention of this in their reports. And also nothing about him pointing weapons until after they saw that video or the picture. He ended with, to believe in something and not to live it is to be dishonest. And that was the end of his closing statement. Todd Engel then got up and he started to go into his closing statement. He was badly objected on by the, how many times did
19 times.
19 times, with only one time being overruled, right?
Yes.
Overruled and being allowed to continue that one time. What they kept saying is, he's testifying. They said, you've got to mention facts and evidence. You can't testify here. You've got to use facts and evidence. So saying words like I or I was or something like that, you have to say the video shows. You can't say I was.
Putting that narrative in there, the government done the same thing for over 4 hours a day. They put things that were not in evidence, speculation of what these guys were thinking and doing in their whole closing arguments today. But Todd wasn't allowed to do this.
Yes. He said that said in the evidence shows that I didn't go towards the bridge. I went towards Nevada Highway Patrol. That he showed up at 11:29 and for 20 minutes he was in the parking lot and wasn't doing anything until a lady said they were pointing guns at protesters. He said you could hear it in the Flynn video. Alex Ellis testified to it. Then he ran down the road to the bridge and saw what was going on. He had his camera. He didn't have his gun up. He had his camera and he was viewing what the BLM were doing. Then he says, from the aerial footage and the Shalakas footage, you can see I ran the other direction to Nevada Highway Patrol, where I spent the rest of the day with law enforcement. He ended his with, "I don't know what more I could have done to help it end peacefully." He was the last person to give his closing statement by the end of the day today. So tomorrow morning we start at 8 o'clock in the morning, not 8:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And we will hear from Scott Drexler, Ricky Loveling, Greg Burleson, and then the government will have a chance. Myrie himself will get up and do the end.
I think especially with what we saw with Todd today, he wasn't allowed to say, "I drove to Bunkerville and I stopped at Mesquite at 8 a.m. and I stopped at the breakfast buffet." Objection. There's no evidence that you stopped at a breakfast buffet. The fact that he stopped at a breakfast buffet is immaterial to what they're trying to charge him with, but it's an intimidation tactic to take someone who is not an experienced attorney and to try to trip him up. Todd Engel today overcame a volley, 19 objections to what he had to say today. He did an excellent job, and he was able to go through every count on that indictment and say, they want to say I was in a conspiracy. I didn't know any of these people. They want to say that I intimidated or threatened anyone. I heard the word disperse, and I ran over to the police to say these guys are pointing guns at me. He said, I stayed there for an hour, and when I left, the guys that I talked to patted me on the back, and they said, thanks for your help. Todd Engel did an excellent job today. But the issue with the buffet and the other 19 objections, here's the 10,000-foot view of this entire trial. You cannot defend yourself. And the reason is because the government will come in and they will make it so that you cannot get your witnesses to introduce the evidence that you're going to need to defend yourself. Because you can't bring it up in your closing argument. You can't say this is why I did what I did unless it's been entered into evidence. It leaves a defendant with no choice, with one choice, which is to take the stand. Eric Parker was the only one to do it. It subjects a defendant to the risk of cross-examination. And the government wants it this way. They had 30 witnesses to start with, our defendants. They were down to 2 by the time it was done, and 1 defendant to testify for himself. And now the issue that we're having when we wrangle with the courts is that we cannot get the evidence that we need in to prove that these men are innocent because they weren't allowed to call any witnesses to bring it in front of the jury to begin with. And so the government is working as hard as it can to cripple their defense. Tanasi and Marchese for Stewart and Parker did a great job. I'm going to go as far as to say that Todd Engel drop-kicked the federal government today. Yes. I'm going to go as far as to say that because his plea to his innocence, it was passionate, and it was compelling, and it was heartfelt. And I think Todd Engel put himself in a great place today. And I want you guys to know this is not going to end tomorrow. These guys are going to be in Henderson for another week or so. I want you to stop right now, pay for a stamp, and write these guys a note. 49 cents to put something in the mail and write these guys a note. Let them know that you're thinking about them. Tell Todd what a great job he did. Tell Eric and Steve that you're praying for him and that you know that Scott and Ricky and Greg are going up next and that they're in your thoughts and your prayers because that means the world to them. They are literally on a cliff that's either the rest of their life or they go home to their families. They are in a situation that very few people have ever walked in their shoes. And today my challenge to you is get off the internet, get a piece of paper, and get something in the mail to these guys because they need every bit of it.
Hallelujah.
Awesome. Wow. We are definitely getting you in front of the camera more often.
Okay. I've got one more thing this Saturday, the 15th. I will be down at the West Las Vegas Public Library between 1 and 4 for a Freedom versus Government symposium. If you guys can join us, I will try to get this on the comments of everything. If you can join us, we would love to have you there.
We have several speakers going to be there.
Oh, yeah, John's going to be here.
We have some raffles going to be, and some things we're going to auction off. We have quite a few donated items that people have given us to auction off. If you have anything more, this support is going towards Roger Roots that has been faithfully helping some of the defendants here, and he's not getting paid for it. So he's living on total donations. So this is one of the things, but it's also to spread the information, spread the word about the political prisoners and different government tyranny that we're seeing here, and all these issues. Multiple issues going to be talked about. The Social Security is going to be talked about. Other issues. So please come out if you're near here. If you have any items you want to donate, please do that. But Saturday, April 15th, at about 1 o'clock at the West
Las Vegas Public Library.
Yes. So that's about all we have for you today. Be back down here tomorrow. We'll have another Jericho march at noon tomorrow. Hopefully we're out here, depending on court and closing arguments, what's happening up here. So we're not on a perfect time schedule because we're at the leisure of the judge and them. But we have 3 more defendants tomorrow with closing arguments, and then the government finishes up. And we're hoping this is over with tomorrow, but we do not know. We're hoping that the jurors get the case and start deliberating. But it could be next week. We have no clue or no idea at this point until tomorrow at some point.
I think that the reality that we could have 2 hearings going on at one time, if you're in the Las Vegas area or you can get here, dollars to donuts, Micah McGuire is not expecting anyone in that courtroom. This is a routine hearing for him to decide his counsel. I don't think he expects anyone to be there. I would love to pack that out. We can fit at least 24 people into that courtroom.
Absolutely.
36 or more into the other one. We got a lot of seats to fill. We need a lot of support.
So tomorrow's going to be another big day. We want more people.
Absolutely.
More people, yes.
If you are anywhere nearby and you can make it down here, we plead to you, if you have the ability, come in and join us. And if not, keep us in your prayers.
So 8 o'clock for the biggest closing arguments, 10 o'clock for Micah McGuire.
It's courtroom 3B.
3B. So floor 3, B room, the room B. And then we're in the 7th floor. So those 2 courtrooms, if you can't be at one, come to the other. We need everyone's support down here. Could be the last day of court this week. We do not know if there's court Friday at this point, unless the jurors are deliberating Friday, but we do not know at this point. So thank you, and please come down here and join us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.